Buenas, buenas, buenas. I'm Vanessa, the host of Chicklet, a podcast where I share my unfiltered reviews of books that I think Latinas, women, and millennials would enjoy. Please subscribe and follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, and YouTube at Chicklet Podcast, and enjoy today's episode on the book Too Soon for Adiós by Annette Chavez Macias. It has 297 pages, and the genres are contemporary romance, adult fiction, and I'm going to add another one in there, Latino, more specifically Mexican American. Annette writes stories about love, family, and following your dreams. She's proud of her Mexican American heritage, culture, and traditions, all of which can be found within the pages of her books. For readers wanting even more love stories and guaranteed happily ever after, Annette also writes romance novels under the pen name Sabrina Sol. If you've been following me on social media, you know how happy this book made me. So to kick off Lo Bueno, I want to talk about how Annette did the Latino Mexican American experience justice throughout the entire book by highlighting Latino culture with such tender love and care. All of the characters' names are super Latino, and I love that. We have Gabriela Medina, Diego Paz, Raul, Sandra, Lola, Marta, Juan Olmos, which is Gabby's stepdad. All of the town names out there in like New Mexico and surrounding states are almost all Spanish or Native American words like Sonrisa. Everyone is drawn to the name, like to the town, and it gives you a sense of security because what can go wrong in a town named Smiles? I felt that way, and like several other characters felt that way throughout the book. There's Santa Fe, Milagro Gardens, which is the name of the projects that Gabby's mom and dad and aunts grew up in. There's Amarillo, which we say Amarillo. We have El Monte. And then they also mentioned Bakersfield, California, and that town is like over 90% Mexican American. So I just loved the names of all these places and just being super Latino. I obviously loved it. Another thing that I really liked was the way Annette did Spanglish in this book. It's just like chef's kiss. She says chillona, which is like a crybaby. She uses pues correctly and in the right order of like the sentence. And some of the characters even mention chisme and el malo. And I was literally going to freak out if they were going to mention lo bueno because obviously my segments in the podcast are lo bueno, el chisme, and lo malo. No one said lo bueno. Oftentimes when the media uses Spanglish, it seems super forced, and you can tell that they do it in a way to make sure that non-Spanish speakers understands. This book was written for Latinos, so she uses Spanglish correctly in the right places with the right words without centering non-Spanish speakers, and I love it. Not because it's excluding non-Spanish speakers, but because it's centering us. Like, that's the difference. And a really good example of Latinos censoring Latinidad is any and all of Marcelo Hernandez's skits on SNL and also his stand-up. Like, yes, he uses stereotypes and some of it is crude, but he's not doing it in a derogatory or hateful way. He loves our people and is giving us a space to make fun of ourselves. And the skits on SNL are almost like a parody of what people do in the media, the way that they portray Latinos. It's so good. I find it hilarious. The food that Annette describes in this book and like the way she does it was amazing. The agua frescas with tajin, with lime, the street vendors, how to handle super hot chiles. Like, we all have to learn the hard way. Chiles en nogada, which is poblanos covered in cream sauce with walnuts and red pomegranate seeds. It's Mexican as fuck. There's a nopales salad, which I want to eat, which is cooked cactus, jalapenos, onion, cilantro, tomatoes, queso fresco, and then there's mole. Like, that whole mole scene was just, I want to eat mole. And she says, mole has a number of ingredients, is a dark, almost black sauce made from dried chiles, dried fruit, nuts, assorted spices, and chocolate. The sauce would then be poured over cooked turkey legs and breasts. It was a complex dish with rich flavors and usually involved a 2-day process. The dish is a labor of love. She also gets into what it is to be a No Sabo kid. In Spanish, there's regular words and irregular words, and so you're supposed to say no sé. If someone asks you a question and you're going to say, I don't know, you're supposed to say no sé. But if you don't speak Spanish, you would follow the normal rules of Spanish, and you would think you would have to say no sabo. So it's really common for Latino kids who their family speaks Spanish, but they don't. It's very common for these people to say, No Sabo. And so that's what we call kids who don't speak Spanish. That's where the term No Sabo kid comes from. So the main character, Gabby, was selling some items at a flea market, and a woman spoke to her in Spanish. And when Gabby didn't answer, Annette, the author, goes into really great detail of what it's like for Latinos who don't speak Spanish. She says this: there's always a reaction when Latinos don't speak Spanish, and it usually comes in three stages. First, there's disbelief, as if being bilingual is something we need to lie about. Second comes anger. For some reason, not speaking a language some stranger assumes you speak is somehow offensive to them. The third is pity. They feel sorry for our parents and for us because obviously we must be a disappointment if we don't speak Spanish. And oftentimes there's a fourth response, which is discrimination. They now see us as less than. We're not worthy of cooking Mexican food, enjoying Latino music, and taking part in any kind of cultural tradition. Like there's some rule that because you don't speak Spanish, you can't call yourself a Latino. Instead, you get labeled a coconut or a no sabo kid. As a kid, like me myself, I distinctly remember being made fun of by other Spanish speaking kids, my own family members, aunts, uncles, family friends, cousins, and strangers for my Spanish. I was definitely a no sabo kid, and as I got older, I took it upon myself to get better at Spanish. Annette made me feel seen and in community by sharing that process in such great detail. Not to mention, right after the interaction Gabby had with that lady at the flea market, she owned her by snatching the item from her and telling her it wasn't for sale anymore. It's really gross how American Latinos treat each other for not speaking Spanish when it's not our fault or our parents' fault for like us not being able to speak Spanish. We have so much going on in our lives, and parents are away at work, kids are in English speaking schools, there are life events going on. We definitely have to be more gentle with our people. We can't be a source of each other's pain anymore. It's heartbreaking, and we won't feel better about ourselves by bringing other people down. And the way Annette names racism and discrimination in short bits rather than long drawn out descriptive scenes that re-traumatizes the audience. Another example is Gabby is a chef, and she goes into detail about how difficult that space is for anyone, even more so for a Latina. She says, being a female sous chef isn't easy to begin with, but throw in being Latina, I have to prove I deserve to be in the kitchen even before I cook a single meal. Everything I do, everything I say is dissected and judged. It took me years to get to my first position, but to do it, I had to be smart, but not too smart. I had to be nice, but not too nice. I had to be tough, but not too tough. I had to be attractive, but not beautiful. Do you understand? Saying the wrong thing to the wrong chef or food critic could overshadow the most important thing about me. I'm a fucking great chef. So Annette easily could have gone into a couple pages describing a time at a culinary admissions interview, or maybe a boss at work discriminated against her for being Latina, but instead she decided to be concise and sum it up in a few sentences. And I just appreciate that. To me, that's the best way to talk about racism and discrimination, when your audience is the people that are being discriminated against to begin with. Gabby and also other characters in the book, when they're faced with racism and discrimination and biases, Annette does a really good job of showing a middle lane way to deal with it, that it's attainable and also not shaming us if we don't interrupt these things at all. Like, she's delicate with the topics. That's all the Latino stuff. That's all the details that I loved about it. So let me start to recap the book. So it starts out in a really sad tone. Honestly, the whole book is kind of sad, but Gabby's mom passed away after fighting cancer for a few months. And so entire book is about Gabby navigating life after her mother's death. I'm into sad stuff and gloomier vibes, so I didn't mind it. If anything, it made me enjoy it more. Gabby's mom, Sandra, took pride in her appearance. She never left the house in sweats or without a bra, and she was always wearing jewelry and makeup. She was known for being a good hostess and throwing the best parties for any random holiday. Sandra and Gabby's relationship was messy and complicated. In the book, Gabby recounts a time that as a kid, her mother wasn't speaking to her for a few days, and it took her Aunt Lily confronting her about it for Sandra to make amends. It was sad to see Sandra and Gabby struggle. Gabby felt alone in the world now that her mom passed. At the end of her mom's funeral, she said, "It hit me that I would never see my mom again unless it was a picture. I would never be able to call her on the phone to tell her about something that happened. I would never be able to just be with her. I thought the worst thing in the world was going to be having my mom die, but it's not. The worst thing is learning how to live without her. And it just hurts my heart for all the people who have lost their moms or parents and are navigating life without them. Like, I don't care if your mom or dad passed last year, 5 years ago, 20 years ago. If this is causing you pain, like, I'm so sorry. It makes me think of my mom. My mom was, I think, 18 or 19 when her mom passed away. My mom became an adult without her mom. She became a mom without her mom. She lived so much of her life without her mom, and it just hurts me. I almost feel responsible for giving my mom a positive mother-daughter experience since her mother-daughter experience ended over 40 years ago. Gabby and Sandra are able to get by with the help of Sandra's closest friends, Auntie Lily and Auntie Martha. Martha and Lily were practically sisters to Sandra. They shared a lifelong friendship since first grade. Through thick and thin, they were unwavering ride or die, supporting them at every step of the challenging journey, even when Gabby's mom's illness became a hindrance. It was the four of them for a long time. Auntie Lily had kids, but they weren't part of the crew because her kids didn't need the community in the same way that Gabby and Sandra did. I love to see women showing up for other women. At the end of Sandra's funeral, a man arrives at the last minute and claims he's Gabby's biological father. He stays in town for a few extra days afterwards, giving Gabby time to process, and she eventually gives him a chance to talk. He said he inherited his grandmother's house and invited her to live in the house, be in charge of the renovations. He would pay for the renovations. And when they sold the house, she would get all the money. This is almost a heaven sent because Gabby's mom, Sandra, was unable to pay the mortgage those last few months of her life and ended up losing their house, causing them to move in with Auntie Lily, where Gabby had to sleep on the sofa. Before losing the house, she opened credit cards under Gabby's name to make payments. Now her mom has passed and the credit card bills are past due. And I feel like she could have filed something or done something to absolve her from having to pay those bills, considering her mom did it without her permission. I'm not really sure of that process. But Gabby's mom made it a point that she never take handouts. So maybe she thought fighting against those bills would be like taking a handout. I don't know, but my ass would have at least tried. Closed mouths don't get fed. I'll tell you that much. As a last resort, Gabby decides to ask her old boss for her job back, and of course he's an asshole about it and gives her an entry-level position. And at the end of her first day, he tries to sexually assault her. She was able to get away, but was now jobless. So going into a new town, away from what she just went through with her mom and the boss, with the promise of getting a big fat check for the house, seemed like the perfect solution to her problem. So she takes Raul, her biological dad, up on his offer. Becoming a dad at 19 years old was difficult for Raul. He could barely take care of himself, and he didn't know how to be a dad since his dad wasn't around growing up. Raul thought he'd be a crappy dad and that Sandra and Gabby would be better off without him. Only men have the option to back out. What Gabby eventually learns is that Raul tried to be in her life when she was a kid by planning on taking Sandra to court for parental rights. Unfortunately, Raul's mom stole the money for the lawyer and skipped town. Since he wasn't able to be there physically, he asked Sandra to update him on Gabby's life regularly. I was wondering why he never reached out to Gabby once she became an adult, but at one point he says, "All this time I've told myself you were better off without me, that I couldn't offer you anything." And it just really irritates me. It just goes to show that dads are humans and are capable of having low self-esteem and think they're not worthy enough to be part of their kids' lives. And then they go ahead and prove themselves right by not trying to correct their wrongs and not being in their kid's life at all. But I guess Gabby's dad is trying now that he has the house and has something meaningful to offer her, even though having a dad is more meaningful, but I digress. Once Gabby moves to Sonrisa, she says in like 5 different scenes that she's just here to fix up Raul's grandmother's house, sell it, pay off her debts, and get on with the rest of her life. The last few times she says it, though, are her trying to convince herself of the words rather than actually declaring it. While they're doing renovations to the house, Raul made sure that Gabby knew he was serious about putting her in control of the house. He was respectful of the time she needed away from him, how she didn't want to get close to him, and how standoffish she was to him. When they would get close and then she would put distance between them, he was understanding and still reached out to offer to bring her food or invite her to his restaurant if she wanted to have dinner. His patience helped Gabby grow open to the idea of talking to him and made her mature. Since he was handling it well, she was able to handle it well. and I just love him. Toward the end of the book, Gabby says, I wasn't going to look at Raul anymore as the father who had abandoned me, but as the man who gave me a second chance to chase my dreams. Raul was right. He would never be my dad, but he could be my friend. It warms my heart anytime I see a dad be more than a sperm donor to his kids. Every time my cousin's husband gives the baby a bath, my friend's dad goes out of his way to provide childcare for her, or a coworker who's gentle with his disgruntled teenager at a work party. It truly makes my heart so happy for them to know that phenomenal dads exist. It obviously hurts me that I've never had that and I will never have that, but I love to see other people have it. I make it a point to point it out to them how lucky they are that they have really good dads in their lives, because I feel like sometimes, you forget, you don't realize that not everyone is experiencing the things that you're experiencing. One of the first people Gabby meets in Sonorisa is Diego. He's the mayor in the small town. He used to be a doctor, and he's also the handyman that fixes Gabby's great grandmother's house. And he and Gabby do not get along in the beginning. She overhears him saying that she's judgmental and opinionated, and we don't find out until like halfway through the book that he said that because of two reasons. A, he's best friends with Raul, and so he was upset with her for not wanting to give him a chance because he knew how great he was. And also, everyone always tries to set him up with new women in town. And so he just always says that they're not his type and he wants nothing to do with them to get those people off his back. Over time, though, she starts to see how warm he is, how he interacts with the townspeople, how helpful he is to everyone, and how thoughtful he is. He starts to help Raul and Gabby get closer by orchestrating hangouts for the three of them and then leaving the two of them alone. He plants ideas in each of their heads that he knows the other one would like, and he also calls Gabby out when she's treating Raul unfairly. They have this banter between them where they always have some shit to say to one another. It's like snarky and sarcastic with some underlying like side comment. It's clear there's tension, and it's because she feels rejected by what he said when they first met, and also because they like each other. One of the first times that they have a genuine interaction was when Diego saw the bruises that Gabby had from when her boss tried to sexually assault her. Diego asked her where she got the bruises and stepped closer to her. Gabby says, I was shocked by the anger I saw reflected in his hard stare. His taut jawline and flared nostrils made me believe that if I gave him a name, he'd go track that person down right then and there. But there was no way I was going to be sending him after my boss. He proceeds to tell her some home remedies to heal the bruises and alleviate the pain. We love a protective man who's going to defend our honor and try to help us feel better. It took a long time for Diego and Gabby to get together, but I appreciated that there was a gradual growth throughout the book. Their relationship shifted rather than just magically one day kissing. We also have to remember she was also grieving her mom's death and coming to terms with starting to like her biological father, who she just met and hated for the past 30 years. So I appreciated Diego's patience with her and the people of the town's patience with her. Throughout the book, Gabby grows, she develops boundaries, is vulnerable, and lets the people of Sonorisa into her life. The author did a really good job of explaining representation. It's a small town filled with people who look like me and my family. It's quite something to live in a place where your heritage is the town's heritage. There were small towns all across America where I would have stood out like a sore thumb, not just because of the color of my skin. My body, my hair, my clothes, all would have been one big flashing neon sign that screamed outsider. Even if Raul's family, well, my family hadn't helped found Sonrisa, I somehow knew I still would have been accepted here. So Sonrisa is like a really cute town, and Gabby connects with some of the people from there. One is the librarian. Obviously, it's a librarian. Like, we love them. And there's also Lola. Lola was friends and neighbors with Raul's grandma. Lola makes healing remedies, is super empathetic, and gets people to open up and shares hard truths with them. Gabby says, Lola has this ability to look into your soul and tell you things about yourself you sometimes don't want to hear. She knows things before you even tell her. It's cool, but it also makes me uneasy. She says she can't help it and that all this stuff just spills out of her on its own. Personally, I think she's a very empathetic person and can connect to others on a very deep level. When Gabby was sick, Lola made her barley water, cucumber water, and sabha coconut milk. Lola helps Gabby learn about the meaning of love, to see herself the way those around her see her, that she's missing a great opportunity here to learn more about her heritage by keeping Raul away. I'm struggling with how much to share about these parts because I found them so sweet and meaningful that I almost don't want to take that away from you if you decide to read the book. But Lola's very profound throughout the entire thing, and she shares some of Raul's family history with Gabby that helps her understand him. To oversimplify it, there was a lot of stubbornness, pain, and generational trauma going on in Raul's family. And there are some amazing things about their ancestors in terms of founding Sonorisa, how and why. And this is one of the things that helps Gabby be proud of her heritage. And Raul's rocky past helped her warm up to the idea of giving him a chance. And so, up until over 2/3 of the book, Gabby's learning about Raul and the town and her family's heritage from Diego and Lola. They're very important characters in the book. For the chisme portion, I want to talk about Carolina. She judged Lola for making remedies and burning incense. She also helped the gentrifiers. Companies pick a neighborhood, buy up a couple houses in the neighborhood at asking price, then they buy one last house, sell that one at over the asking price, and that drives up the average. Now they can go back and sell those other houses at the new higher price. While that's so beautiful for companies, good for them for figuring out these ways to make a shit ton of money, I personally struggle with the fact that they're selling them for higher prices than what the locals can afford. One or two houses isn't a big deal, but over time, they buy so many of the houses that the culture of the neighborhood shifts and it displaces the people who have always lived there. Gabby decides not to sell the house, and rather than go on a rant about how racist and unethical gentrification is, and give you examples of it in Jersey City, Newark, and even here in Austin, I thought the way Annette described the interaction was beautiful, so I'm just going to share that instead. So Gabby says, it's not just a house, it's a piece of history, it's a part of a community. It would be a shame for Sonorisa to become just another city with overpriced homes and big chain stores. You and the company don't seem to understand that small towns like Sonorisa are becoming endangered. If we allow corporations to buy up businesses and homes here, that will displace a community of people who have lived here for generations. And I love that. She grows to love Sonorisa and the people in it, and she decides to stay and be with Diego. Oh my God, finally, thank God. Another part of Chisme that I want to add is how being in nature actually affects your brain. When Diego takes Gabby to Jemez Falls, she describes it like this. It's definitely something beautiful and wonderful to look at. It forces you to take a breath and pause for a minute. It's almost like it gives you permission to just be, to just exist. All those worries and struggles you have in your life can be put aside because none of them matter here. The water, the trees, even the rocks were reminders that there was more to this planet than just my little complicated corner of it. On Huberman's podcast, he shares that there are dozens of peer-reviewed studies explaining how getting sunlight directly into your eyes, specifically in the morning, can set your circadian rhythm and helps your alertness throughout the day, your sleep at night, and your metabolism. Your mental health, physical health, and performance are positively impacted by seeing green and blue colors, running streams, moving bodies of waters, and parks for about 10 to 30 minutes, 3 to 7 days a week. And I just thought that this was a really great excuse to remind everyone to go outside. If you're in New Jersey, I know it's cold out. I was unemployed one winter and I actually went outside every single day to see which temperatures were too cold for me to be outside in. And I determined that anything below 45 degrees was not for me. So that doesn't mean that 45 degrees is your number. And also, New Jersey is not Antarctica. Like, even if it's 30 degrees out, like, you can go outside for 5 minutes. Like, I promise you can go outside and take a deep breath, feel the wind, look at the trees, look at the dreary sky. Like, just go outside and just be in nature for like 5 minutes, even though it says 10 minutes, 3 to 7 days a week. Like, just do something. I just wanted to take the opportunity to say that even if you're in Jersey, you can do it. And if you're here in Austin, if you think this is cold, no, it's not. You're wrong. Don't worry about it. Go outside. For Lo Malo, the sex scenes were not enough. Like, there were just no details. Just said that they kissed, that he pressed her against the wall. He was describing how she felt emotionally, which is nice. Like, we do want that, but maybe like she could have gotten more hot and steamy. Like, I personally would have appreciated that, but I'm definitely going to be reading her books under Sabrina Sol. Like, that's her other name, because I'm reading those hot and steamy books, girl. Like, we needed more of that between Diego and Gabby. I also feel like maybe it could have been more happy But that's not for me. That's for my audience because I like sad stuff. So that's not a real complaint. That's more so a complaint for the people listening. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. New episodes are uploaded on Friday mornings. You can also follow me on social media and YouTube at Chick Lit Podcast. And remember, if you have any book recommendations, send them my way. Thank you for listening.